the kind of damage we're talking about: entire hands blown off. We're seeing deep flesh wounds at men's belt line, at their waistline, and some of the damage has incapacitated them, made them unconscious. The main thing here I want to stress is follow the timeline. Back in January, we were following a Hassan Nasrallah speech where he told his men, get off WhatsApp, get off Telegram, get off your social media. The enemy is hacking in and following our communications. Since then, it was believed that they made a major push to move to older forms of communication. These radios, these are being described as pagers. We're seeing through Hezbollah's own channels that possibly more than one kind of device was affected. Now, I want to say that based on my experience, I've had a cell phone explode before, the battery. It does not cause this kind of damage. Based on everything that I've reviewed and seen, these images show devices that had to have been physically manipulated to cause the kind of damage. We're talking about entire hands blown off. We're seeing deep flesh wounds at men's belt line, at their waistline, and some of the damage has incapacitated them, made them unconscious. This is
Yes.
would be very remarkable if it was a series of batteries to explode,
Yes.
small batteries. It just does not add up. This looks like these were modified, and what's more, it looks like they rang or beeped at these men based on the number of injuries to these men's hands. We're seeing it looks like they were grabbing them or had picked them up as it was trying to give them some sort of notification, and then they exploded. We're seeing dozens of videos of men with their hands nearly blown off. So
Really?
this, just the scale of this is remarkable. And I should mention that we're getting similar reports of these explosions in Damascus inside Syria as well.
Goodness me, Zach. And to have, well, 1,000 people, hundreds of these devices exploding at, well, pretty much simultaneously. It's beyond the bounds of possibility. This was anything other than an organized attack using these devices triggered remotely. No other explanation makes any sense whatsoever. And the finger of suspicion absolutely inevitably will point towards the intelligence force of Israel. But I guess they're saying nothing as one would expect, I suppose, at this point.
Yeah, you would. I think the main thing here tonight is one of the chief elements of warfare. If you are about to launch a major offensive, if you're about to launch a major operation, if you have the opportunity to blind your enemy, to put your enemy in the dark so that they don't know what's coming, you do that. So is this the precipice for a larger attack? Is this Israel getting ready to go on the offensive? Well, in the last 48 hours, we've seen the prime minister and his defense minister openly sparring about what to do here in the north. The prime minister allegedly was getting ready to, or is still getting ready to, fire defense minister Gallant over their disagreements on how to handle the northern situation, how to handle Hezbollah. The prime minister wants to launch some form of military operation to end the conflict here and to return the 60,000 plus Israelis that have been evacuated from these areas near the border. The defense minister was publicly saying we need to give diplomacy a bit more time. Well, last night he stated that to Amos Hochstein, the U.S. envoy that visited Israel, I believe he's still in Israel. The press statement that came out of that late last night was the defense minister changing his tone and saying that the only way to bring a solution about here in the north would be by force, to get Hezbollah to move away from this border by force.
Right, so a more aggressive tone from the Israeli leadership and the Israeli military, and you can call it, I suppose, a military strike, which amounts to a coup on the part of Israel's forces. For the sake of a working assumption, it seems a safe one. Assume this was done by the Israeli military and their intelligence branches. But my word, Zach, what an operation to have pulled this off, to have loaded these devices, which Hezbollah, we know, and you've been telling us, rely on so heavily, with explosives capable of being triggered in this way.
I'm scratching my head here. I don't know how an operation of this scale could possibly have slipped. I'm really curious. I don't know if we will ever know the full scale of what's happened here, or if we're going to fully understand the timeline of a covert operation such as this. but I cannot wrap my head around how is Hezbollah, which has shown to be a technologically adept organization, a very smart, savvy group. How not one of them, as they're in these warehouses building these sophisticated drones, how one of them didn't at 8, 9 o'clock at night after the end of their shift go, you know what? I'm a guy that likes to tinker. I'm going to take apart this pager and just see what's inside these new pagers that we've been handed to or
Yeah.
delivered at some point in the last few months. I cannot believe that no one inside this organization ever thought to open up one of these things and see what the chief form of communication, this lifeline that they're relying on,
Yeah.
and try and investigate this. I should note that at this point in the conflict, Hezbollah themselves have said that 450 of their men have died in the fighting in southern Lebanon by these airstrikes and drone strikes. This we're seeing right now. Initially, it was reported as dozens, and then that number jumped up to over 1,000 within the span of about an hour. I would suspect that this number is going to continue to climb throughout the night
Yeah.
because we see two hospitals in Beirut that are reporting they are at capacity and they are turning men away
Yes.
and trying to shuttle them to area hospitals. So the scale of this, John, it's just it's hard to comprehend.
Yes, and clearly the natural thought is it could be the beginning of again a new phase in the conflict. Before we come to that, Zach, I mean, just as it sits, these pages, these electronic communication devices, are a principal means of communication between those who operate, those who are within the Hezbollah organization. In this one stroke, let us say Israel, they have broken, they have shattered a main line of communication within that organization, which in itself surely incapacitates to a significant degree the abilities of Hezbollah on its northern border.
And these devices are going to be used twofold, right? They're going to be used to coordinate, especially the radios. And again, we're seeing reports that potentially more than one device, one kind of device, was affected.
Yeah.
They're going to be using these radios when they're near the border to communicate some of these rocket launches and to receive orders that way. They are, by my understanding, using or were using encrypted devices. Some of the lessons that have been learned by the Russian-Ukrainian war is the Ukrainians were very quick to get into the old Soviet radios that the Russians were using and be able to monitor the traffic and intercept the communication that was taking place. Hezbollah, we were seeing about 6, 7 months ago that they were investing in some of the encrypted radios, some more uh, 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 better devices, I guess is the way to put it.
Yeah.
So they're using this to in combat to be able to communicate with each other, communicate these rocket launches.
Yes.
But I think the pager element for all these injuries that we see in Beirut, those are the kind of devices that are going to ring and communicate and essentially be a Hezbollah assemble moment.
Yes.
That's how they communicate when they need to pull in reserves or pull men out of Beirut and
Yes.
get them heading on the road south.
Yeah, and well, given as you say, Zach, we've seen 450 Hezbollah fighters killed in this action on the northern border. Now we're looking at 1,000 or so of those. Most of them, many of them, most of them, a part of Hezbollah, and that number could rise. It could easily be, one would imagine, the precursor of some new strike by Israel to take advantage of the now weakened enemy. And in any event, Zach, I mean, this blow against Hezbollah, it's not overstating it to describe this as a humiliation of this organization in the eyes of the Middle East, in the eyes of the world. Everything would then point to some form of escalation being, well, pretty much inevitable.
I think so. I think that, and I'm going to go out on a limb here, and I'll just speak about what my questions are at this hour. Based on my understanding, my last year here in Israel, and how I've got to know some of the men that make these decisions, I would struggle to understand if you are to carry out a operation of this scale, if you also wouldn't have a plan in place to try and target Hezbollah leadership at the
Yes,
same time.
yes,
Now, we're getting reports that several senior men were also wounded by these same devices. My question going forward is, were there other targets? Obviously, this is a major breach in Israel here, likely flexing their muscles in their ability to perform these covert operations, to infiltrate inside Lebanon at this scale.
yes,
Do they have other forms of, have they infiltrated other branches of Hezbollah, a massive organization like
yes.
this, and tried to hurt them in more than one ways? I think that's the question going forward. We should probably know some more probably very soon, within the next
Yes.
few hours.
Well, clearly, Zach, we need to and we will watch for the way this story unfolds in these coming minutes and these coming hours. This is a very much a developing story, the beginning of of an extraordinary a story from the front there
One of the most
in the
remarkable
Middle
things
East.
I've ever seen. I
Yeah.
can't even begin to describe the scale of this. It's incredible what they pulled off.
Absolutely, absolutely startling and stunning. And we'll also, by the way, be watching for any sort of reaction from Iran. That will be another question. Iran, they are the force that controls, has so much sway over Hezbollah. How will they react in what sort of form too? Zach, I hope we can keep in touch on
Right.
this as this story unfolds.
Of course. Thank you, John.
Good to talk to you as always. Zach Anders there.